everywhere. They're producing slick, Hollywood-quality videos, and they're pumping them out there to millions around the globe. Reason why? Gary B says if we want to defeat ISIS once and for all, we need to cut off all their cash right now.
Brenda, we've seen it time and time again. Terrorist countries, terrorist organizations, organized crime all have an Achilles heel. It's the money. That's what they're really in existence for. Yes, they say they're arguing to make a point, but the blood, the lifeblood of them that do all the things you talked about, the propaganda, taking over five-star hotels, all the things they steal all gets down to the money. You cut that off, Brenda, it's going to be just like Al Capone. Al Capone finally went to prison, thank God, because of the whole money thing with the IRS. That's the way to get to these organizations. That's what we need intelligence to do, to cut off the funding. They will wither, die, and go away.
John, is part of this, because it's harder to do than just to say it, is part of this putting sanctions on countries who are somehow giving the money?
Yes, that's a huge part of it. I agree with Gary B. I wouldn't take military completely off the table. I don't think it's an either-or proposition. But you have ISIS is not funded like Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations, from state-sponsored terrorism to donors giving large amounts of money. It's funded predominantly like a business. And what we did with North Korea years ago was cut off their bank in Macau. At one point, the dictator couldn't even pay his main generals. We can put sanctions on any country that deals with ISIS in any way, and you will start to cut off that funding. You can't stop the hostage as far as, because that's private enterprise and some government's giving some money, but the oil shipments and the oil sales you can. That has to come through a country. Put sanctions on those countries.
Nomi, you agree?
I definitely agree with you. We should try to sanction whoever it is that's any of these actors that are facilitating these transactions on their behalf. But it's a little bit more complicated. When you have countries like Turkey, who's an ally of ours, we can't put sanctions on Turkey. This is where diplomacy comes in hand, because we have to figure out how these relationships are built. Who brokers? Who are the people who are paying their bills? Because it's not happening with cash. It's happening through banks, banking systems. I mean, they're doing it through Iraq's bank system. Who are buying their servers? Who's keeping them running? And it's really like working those relationships to make sure that we cut off their funding sources. And it's not going to happen through sanctions when you've got allies doing this.
Lisa?
Well, the problem is we don't have a president that has built up a lot of trust with some of our allies and coalition partners. But the problem is that outside of bombing oil facilities, it's very difficult to try to cut down on their funding, because the reality is ISIS is making a lot of their money from selling hostages to European countries, from selling oil, from taxing businesses and farmers within the territories they control, and they also operate largely in cash. So the problem is they're operating outside of legitimate channels that the Treasury can target down and track.
Okay, Jonas?
Well, that's it. We're pussyfooting around the topic here. It's the same problem with Al Capone. We still haven't solved it. These criminal organizations live off currency primarily. Why do we still have currency? Why don't we get together with the major countries and just phase out currency? Like, at the end of the day, the sanctions only screw up legitimate businesses. The currency is what keeps all the shakedowns, the hostage stuff, the criminal, the prostitute, all the illegal stuff is in currency, and you can't stop it. It doesn't matter how popular the president is abroad. It's currency. They've got billions of it, of our currency, in all these countries, in Iraq, everywhere. Suitcases of it is how they do business. We have to make it worthless and then move it all through the banking system, where at least you can track it. You can seize it. The IRS seizes bank accounts. They can't seize a suitcase full of cash. So we're in the same problem as we were with Al Capone. It's decades later. It's absurd.
Well, the government's doing a pretty good job of making it worthless right now. Okay, can I give just John last word quickly?
Yeah, look, this is an all-cash business, unlike what was said earlier. And if Turkey is the one that is allowing a lot of this to come through, and why not sanction them? Why not force them to do the right thing and cut off ISIS funding?
Okay. Thanks, guys. And